Buenos días a todos. Mi nombre es Diana Reyes y voy a dar instrucciones sobre cómo acceder a la traducción para esta presentación. En la parte inferior de la pantalla, haga clic en el globo a la derecha con la palabra interpretación debajo. En la ventana que abre, haga clic en SP o español. Los participantes en el canal de idioma escucharán el audio traducido y también el audio original a un volumen más bajo. Deberá presionar silenciar el audio original para que no escuche ningún eco del inglés debajo del español. Deberá seleccionar esta opción al seleccionar el idioma. Gracias.
Welcome to our webinar. It is so wonderful to be here with you all, and thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. My name is Elena Trueworthy. I'm the Deputy Commissioner at the Office of Early Childhood, and welcoming you here to our webinar today entitled A Path Forward, Creating a Climate that Promotes Success for All, right? The importance of really believing in people, right? And showing that through the climate and the environment that we set in our programs, in our centers, in our homes, and in our community, right? Make sure that everyone, every child, and every adult feels welcomed. I was thinking about this introduction and welcoming and thinking about an experience that I had when I worked in an early childhood program. There was a mom that I would see often who would stick around after dropping her son off in his classroom. She would kind of wander around the hallways and kind of poke her head in and out, and one day made a joke and said, "Oh, you're still here?" And looking back, I don't think that was the best thing. And I know the speakers and the will share strategies today of best practice. But fortunately, she opened up and she said, "Yes, like I love it here. It makes me feel good." Right. And I know now why my child loves to come here every day. And knowing that mom's background, that was a lot for her to express. And that really hit me really hard. And that's an experience that I take and I remember to this day. And at the Office of Early Childhood, where we work, right, to make sure that our partners, our programs, our parent cabinet members, and others feel a sense of welcoming and feeling included in the work today. And I'm so grateful for the leadership of Dr. Lorna and team here, as well for all the powerful speakers that will share their experiences today with us. To get us started, I'm going to introduce Dr. Charles Hughes. He's the Deputy Commissioner for Academics and Innovation at the State Department of Education. He has held positions as a high school social studies teacher, assistant principal, assistant superintendent, and even athletic coach before transitioning to administration. And Dr. Hughes, it has been such a pleasure working with you in partnership. And I have to say that you actively walk the walk when it's about setting climate, especially in our work that we do together.
Thank you so much, DC Trueworthy. Yes, it has been a pleasure, and good afternoon, everyone. So happy to be here with you, representing the State Department of Education and really the strong partnership that we have with the Office of Early Childhood. So, you know, talk about inclusivity and relationships and connections. This is the work that's so important to make sure that we work together as agencies for all of you, all of our learners, our children across the state of Connecticut. I want to emphasize something that, in addition to that invitation, that welcome, that connection, in my experience, and Elena, your story with the parent staying after and feeling safe in that space, that's the start of a relationship. And I think relationships are critical to everything in school climate. And that's the relationship between the learner and the care provider or educator. That's the relationship that the educator or care provider has with families. And really, that's the relationship that we as organizations and community need to have with our families. And sharing that leadership role is so important. Hearing from you, working with you, and really guiding the work as it best serves our learners and our children and our families across the state. That's how we really move things in support of the next generation. So thank you so much for letting us be here with you today as you engage in this learning experience. And I'm really excited for our panelists because I know we have a lot of great speakers here, so I don't want to spend too much time me talking. I'm not really that important in this context, so I want to make sure that I give as much time as possible, but just can't emphasize enough to thank you and the excitement about being here today with you all. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I think you really set the stage and a wonderful foundation for what we'll hear upcoming in this webinar with the many important points that you raised up. Thank you, Deputy. Next, I have the very pleasure of introducing our keynote speaker. Donzaleigh Abernathy is the youngest daughter born to Miss Juanita and Reverend Dr. Ralph Daybert Abernathy, who created with his best friend, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the American Civil Rights Movement, which changed the course of American history. Miss Abernathy witnessed the integral decision-making process shaping American laws and society by the creation of the Civil Rights Bill, the Public Accommodations Act, and the Voting Rights Act. Miss Abernathy has a standout legacy in the field of education, notably coming from a family of civil rights icons and being one of the first children to integrate an Atlanta public school. 2 years later, serving on a board and founding a school that helped educate thousands of children. Miss Abernathy is a founding member of the Board of Trustees of the New Visions Foundation, which created New Road School and several other schools in the Los Angeles area. Miss Abernathy has authored several books, including a top coffee table pictorial of American history, which was a top seller and nominated as one of the best books of 2004 for young adults by the American Library Association. Miss Abernathy also has a wealth of experience on screen and stage. She starred for 4 years in over 60 episodes of a series regular on Lifetime Television's critically acclaimed dramatic series, Any Day Now. Other productions she has been a part of includes starring as the leading lady in the Emmy and Golden Globe winning HBO film, Don King, Only in America, opposite Ving Rhames, and in the HBO Emmy and Golden Globe winning Miss Evers' Boys, co-starring with Alfre Woodward, to name a few. When not filming, Miss Abernathy is mentoring youth in schools and through the juvenile justice system, volunteering in the community in various capacities, and continuing to advocate for the civil rights of all human beings. Without further ado, I'll hand it over to Miss Abernathy. Thank you for being here.
Hello, good morning, and thank you all so much for welcoming me. Thank you, dear Lorna, whom I have known since she was a young girl. Her mother was friends with my mother. And so I only have a few minutes and I have a whole lot of history to share. Initially I wasn't going to start with this particular page, but this is the history of what was happening in America. And you can see here, Mexicans and Negroes stay out. And that was the reality of the world that I was born into. And it was just wonderful to know that there are Latino women here and that there needed to be an interpreter, and that the state of Connecticut is advancing forward and taking care of the needs of your people. because it's important. It's about all of us together. So I wanted to tell you as I go forward, that's my Uncle Martin, who was my godfather, whom I grew up with. But so these are my guys. That's my dad, Ralph David Abernathy, and Uncle Martin. And my dad was a college professor at Alabama State. He taught sociology, and he became Dean of Men at Alabama State. And this was what he was doing prior to the civil rights movement, the starting of the movement. And my mother, Juanita Odessa Jones Abernathy, was a business education high school teacher. And one of the other things that she would do after I got older in life, she was a Head Start teacher. So my hats go off to all of the Head Start teachers. The thing about the civil rights movement and growing up in the midst of the civil rights movement, I was aware of everything that was going on, and children are keenly aware. That's my dad. The holiday that we celebrate was my dad's idea that he presented to Congressman John Conyers. And children celebrate this holiday today with great pride because it teaches them to share and to love, because that's what it's all about. Let me just go forward to my guys. So that's my mother and my father, and that's Uncle Martin and Coretta. And they were very instrumental in shaping not only my life, but the lives of young people all across America today. We have a free meal program for low-income children in public schools today that my dad created. And it is very important. And they went to Mississippi in the 60s, and they saw a teacher cutting 2 apples. And Uncle Martin said, "Oh, so this is the snack for the children." And the teacher in Mississippi said, "No, actually, this is the meal that these children will have." And so they were devastated to see that these children were hungry. Children were hungry in Appalachia. Poor white children, poor Black children, poor Latino children were hungry. And if children don't have nourishment, what they're thinking of once they're in the classroom is eating as opposed to learning. But if their stomachs are full, then they can think and then they can learn. And when they learn, they rise up to be the best that they can be, which then helps our society to be a better society. So I'm just going to tell you about really quickly about how it all happened. And you know about Rosa Parks and what happened. Rosa Parks was the 3rd person to be arrested. And so they created the civil rights movement, Daddy and Uncle Martin. And Uncle Martin was not trying to do it. My dad was trying to do it because he had been a soldier. You saw his picture really quickly earlier. He was a soldier in World War II. And my dad was the youngest man, and they made him the sergeant over all of the older Black men because he was 16 years old when he was drafted. And he developed rheumatic fever in England, and they sent him back to Fort Devon, Massachusetts. And unlike the white soldiers, after they fought in the European theater, they were then sent to the islands off of the coast of Japan, where everyone was killed except for one soldier named Benny and my dad. And my dad decided at that point, they had fought and they died to defend our democracy, yet they were denied the right to come back to the United States of America and enjoy that same democracy that they had fought for and died for. And therefore, he was going to dedicate the remainder of his life to a noble cause. Because of the rheumatic fever, they told him he'd never live to be 30. So he needed his life to be of purpose. He met Martin Luther King when they were both, my dad was getting his master's at Atlanta University, and Uncle Martin was getting his undergraduate at Morehouse College. So Granddaddy King, Uncle Martin's father, invited my dad to hear Uncle Martin deliver his first speech. And that's when he heard Uncle Martin. They shook hands. There was chemistry between them. A few days later, my dad had a date with a young lady. She told him she couldn't go out with him. So my dad went by himself to the concert, and there he saw Martin under the tree. He went over to talk to Uncle Martin, and then hiding behind the tree was a young lady who had lied to my dad that she was going to be sick that night. So she stood my dad up for a date with Uncle Martin, and that's how their friendship began. They got rid of that woman, and this bond was created between them. Anyway, this is the beginning of the Montgomery bus boycott. And Uncle Martin was so young, but my dad was the one who decided he was going to do something and organize when Rosa was arrested. And Uncle Martin was reluctant to join him, but Daddy was like, "This is what we're doing." And because they had this friendship, that's what they did. And they spent those 13 years together. That's them going to the courthouse. We were so hungry for our freedom because we had endured 244 years of slavery and then 100 years of Jim Crow segregation. That's 344 years. So it was standing room only in the churches, and they had like 5 meetings per evening. And this was the world of segregation. I'm just going to go forward because this is what you need to see here. It says, we shall overcome with liberty and justice for all, not for some, not for just white people, or not just for Black people, or for Asian people, or for Latino people. The Constitution and the Declaration of Independence was designed to benefit all Americans, regardless of their color, regardless of their religion. So these are the Daddy and Uncle Martin getting arrested. And so here they're learning nonviolence because they didn't know how they were going to fight. But the incredible thing is, this is my sister in this photograph, and this is Glenn Smiley right here, the man, the white man, who taught my father and Uncle Martin the principles of nonviolence. And I'm showing you my sister because she's very important in the shaping of early childhood development. So they ride the bus, and then right after they were able, after 381 days, and we are able to ride on the bus, white people became angry. So what they did in retaliation is they bombed our homes and they bombed our churches. So this is my parents' home. For my father and my mother was left behind. My father and Uncle Martin and Uncle Coretta went to Atlanta, Georgia to create a whole new organization called the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. My mother was there alone in the house. She was pregnant with me. My sister was there. She said she was watching late night television. She got up, she went into the bedroom, and about 15 minutes later, the front of the house just exploded. They had placed the bomb right near the gas line. Thank God the Klansmen who placed the bomb were not good mathematicians, because if they had been good students, they would have known to place the bomb 6 inches closer to the gas line. Then the house would have gone up. They told my mother would have died, my sister would have died, and I never would have been born. This is the other part of where the bomb was. Anyway, that's my mother there. That's my father holding my sister the following day as they're looking at the house and they get ready to leave the house. And you can see here at the lower part of this extremity, that's my mother's stomach, and I'm there inside of my mother. The thing of it is whatever happens to a mother during that pregnancy, the fetus feels that. And so I was born 6 months later, trembling. I literally shook 6 months. My mother would change my diaper and she said, "Oh Lord, please let my baby stop trembling." I took on the stress and the trauma. I do remember that my mother and father were both readers, and my mother, while they were outside of the house, would read aloud. And as she would read aloud, my sister would be there with her, but I was there taking in. And I moved the other day, and the thing that I realized is I own more books than I own clothing, than I own shoes. And it is something that came to me while I was inside of my mother's womb. They bombed my father's church that same night. They bombed this white minister's house, Reverend Robert Gratz. So they bombed my parents' home, my father's church, Bell Street Church, Mount Olive Church, in the home of this white minister, Reverend Robert Gratz, sending a message to him that he was a bad white man because he was the pastor of a Black church. But Reverend Gratz decided he was going to spend the rest of his life there. And as a little girl growing up in the midst of this integrated world, it taught me to love, not to hate. And when I saw white people who were a part of our struggle, I knew that we were not in our struggle alone. We were in a struggle together to make America live up to the principles upon which our nation was founded. Here they are learning nonviolence. And this is how people retaliated, by saying that race mixing was communist, but it really and truly wasn't. That's the first March on Washington. And then Uncle Martin got stabbed. And as a little girl, I remember Uncle Martin getting stabbed. And as a child, you feel and hear and all of what was happening. And Uncle Martin told us that it touched the aorta, and that if he had sneezed, it would have ruptured the aorta and he would have died. And we used to climb on top of him and then kiss him. But the other thing I just want you to see, and I just want you to see them. So that's me right there, this little girl in the middle. I'm on Uncle Martin's lap. That's Uncle Retta. That's my mother. That's my sister, me and Uncle Retta, and my dad and me. And we're living in Montgomery. And because Uncle Martin used to bite his fingernails, I decided to bite my fingernails. Because of trauma, I sucked my thumb. I pretty much sucked my thumb till I was about 10 years of age. But the thing of it is that children take on and they see. So my sister, when she was much younger than this, and I was probably about a year old, when you'd go to church, you know, after service, everybody would want to come over and kiss the baby and kiss my sister. And by the time we got home, her cheeks were just red from an allergic reaction to something in the lipstick. And as a little 1-year-old or even younger, I'm in my mother's arms. And I realized when people would come to kiss me, I would blow bubbles like this. And if I blew bubbles and spit, the ladies would not kiss me because I did not want my cheeks to have an allergic reaction like my sister. And so when my sister started to learn how to write, she was a left-handed person. And back then, teachers would hit you on your left hand and force you to pick up the pencil with your right hand. And that traumatized my sister so much that she started to stutter, just like President Biden stuttered. And so my sister had great difficulty speaking. So I was the little person, and I just decided that I needed to speak for my sister. So we made up our own little language that we would communicate. And when my sister wanted something, I would go and ask my mother or my father or all the adults so that I could speak for my sister because she couldn't get the words out. And that's the trauma that children go through. And this is all pre-kindergarten, when they are, children are simply just trying to be children. And it is natural for them to do certain things. They shouldn't be penalized for the things that they do. Anyway, like I said, we made up our language. And so when my sister learned to write, I learned to write. When my sister learned to do her math, I learned. When she learned to count, I learned to count. And even though my sister was 3 years older, whatever she was doing, I was going to do it because I knew that I needed to be the caregiver for my sister. And so children understand. The strangest thing is when we finally moved to Atlanta, I was in nursery school. The bombing had gone off at 16th Street Baptist Church, and children were killed in the bathroom. And so as a little girl, I knew that I could not go to the bathroom. So every day at rest, you had little rest time. You laid on a little cot, and then after you got up, everybody would go outside and we'd have PE. But every single day I would urinate on myself. And so my mother would send me to nursery school with a little paper bag that had a washcloth, a bar of soap, and fresh panties. And this is the trauma. Children will take on the trauma of the adults. Children see everything that the adults see and experience. And the other thing is, children hear what you say. They see what you do, and they mirror more of what you do than what you say. This is Uncle Martin's oldest daughter, Yolanda, who was my sister's best friend. And so everything for us was about Yolanda. It wasn't about Uncle Martin. Yoki was between my sister and I, and as far as our age was concerned. So we did everything together just as two families because it was a safer environment. But Yoki and my sister used to think that we were cursed because people were being killed along the way as we were fighting for freedom. And I kept trying to convince them that no, we are blessed, because I took on religion because of my father and Uncle Martin. I took on their religion. I did learn from, and that's Martin. who I was born. So I was born in August and Martin was born in October. And Uncle Martin is removing a cross. You can see this burned cross on the lawn of their house. And you can see Martin's hand over his face because he understands. You cannot pretend that children don't understand, children don't see, and children don't know. Know, they see, they understand, and they hear. They understand when people compare. They understand when you fawn over another child and you forget them. There needs to be a democracy when we're dealing with all children, and that all children need to know that they are loved and appreciated. And they also come from homes that sometimes where there's trauma going on in the home. And the important thing is once they get into that classroom, that you have teachers that show love for them. That is what I did have. I was fortunate enough to have some teachers who loved me. And these are the kids. That's Martin and Yolanda. So I was always the age of Martin, and Yolanda was my sister, just a year under my sister. And here we are. This is us on the porch of our house that had been bombed. So my sister has a softer look. My brother is somewhere else, but you can see in my eyes this clearness that I developed because I knew that I needed to be the protector of my sister. I had to be the protector of my brother. I had to be the protector of my father and my mother. And when we would drive to the deep south, I could not sleep in the car. I would always stay awake and talk to my dad to make sure that he stayed awake so that there would never be an automobile accident, that I would be there with him. And strangely, for the remainder of my life, that became my role and still is my role as the protector and the provider of our family, simply because of the way that people mistreated my sister as a young girl. Anyway, so these are the Freedom Riders. And I'll never forget the morning of the Freedom Riders. They were trapped overnight. This is Jim's word. They beat him when they arrived in Montgomery. He and John Lewis. And daddy had a press conference. Like a Martin came over and the people are trapped in the church. And they took Virginia Durr, this white woman's car. They were angry that she had tended. And they turned her car over and they set it on fire. And you can see Uncle Martin with his hands over his eyes, just like, what am I going to do? His son Martin had that same expression as a little baby you saw, a toddler a few images back. Anyway, Bobby Kennedy sent in the National Guard, but you can see the people sleeping. And here the National Guard releasing them at like 3 o'clock in the morning from my dad's church. But I'll never forget this day because this is my parents' home. So the following morning, they had the press conference at my parents' home. And I awakened that morning and there were Black and white students sleeping on pallets in our living room. And for me, it was a traumatic moment because my mother was gone. Our housekeeper was there, Rosa, who used to take care of us 5 days a week. And I barely had any hair. And my sister found the scissors and she cut the top of my little braid off, which was very traumatic for me, which is why I remember this day so clearly. This is John Lewis, who would become Congressman John Lewis, Uncle Martin, my dad, and Wyatt T. Walker, who worked for them. And then Denzel Washington wrote a movie called The Great Debaters. And this was a young man who was the great debater who grew up. His name was James Farmer, and he was in charge of the Congress of Racial Equality. And right here, you can see our little rocking horse. But I remember this day, and then I remember the members of the press, and then the Freedom Riders, the National Guard was there. The Freedom Riders were able to continue. And as a little girl, I was realizing how important it was, the role that we play in American history, and that we cannot be just trying to get our own. We are our brother and sister's keepers, and we have to do our part. And these, I'm just showing you the Black and white students, and this is the world that I grew up in. And then my father was arrested for going into the white restaurant at the train station. And then white students across America took to the streets. These are students in Seattle. You can see here, discrimination hurts Seattle. All across America, young white people of conscience rose up Latino people, Black people, Native American people, Jewish people. And that's me, that little girl again. And you can see I'm very clear. There's a camera. My sister's looking off, my brother's looking off, my mother's looking off, my father is looking, but here you can see me clear onto the camera because this is my family. I have to protect my family. And then we took a knee, like Colin Kaepernick, and this is the integration. And this is just a continuation of what happened. But the incredible thing is here what happened in Birmingham, because we couldn't try clothing on in the department stores. And that's mother and daddy. That's, well, anyway, I'm just showing you the pictures. But here you see young girls taking to the streets, and the girls were the ones who led the Birmingham movement. And women were the facilitators of change. But men write the history books and they try to say that it was the men, but it's actually, in actuality, it was the women. The men took over the leadership roles, but the churches were filled with women. And the incredible thing for me, you can see this little girl getting arrested, going to jail for our freedom. These children being arrested because they wanted a world to be free. And it says here, can a man love God and hate his brother? And they turn the water hoses and the dogs. But I'm gonna go all the way because I want you all to see what they did. And as a little child, seeing all of this shaped us, shaped me. And I knew that President Kennedy had called them to Washington to care. Children see all of that. And my mother and Aunt Coretta were beautiful. And I kept thinking, well, that's lovely. But I wanted to be like my dad and Uncle Martin, who were the thinkers, who were in the presence and were more than just pretty. And then they went to Hollywood, and the movie stars, Marlon Brando gave them $50,000 to pay the bond for all of those children who were arrested. And then we went. And then this is another thing, these are my dad's words, friends of freedom, put your shoulders to the wheel and push for freedom until freedom rings from every mountainside, yes, even southern mountainsides. And Uncle Martin would take my dad's words and put them on the I Have a Dream speech. But as a little girl, I'll never forget walking down the hallway and going into the room where the men were writing speeches and thinking to myself, well, I can be a writer. I can be a speech writer. And that's when I decided that day, the day before the March on Washington in 1963, that I was going to be a writer, which would in turn make me author this particular book that I wrote, Partners to History. And so children find out and they know who they're going to be. I remember this day vividly, and everybody coming together for our freedom. And yeah, and as we stood on the steps, I don't remember my dad speaking that day, but I remember Uncle Martin speaking. And so that's Uncle Martin speaking, that's Aunt Coretta, that's my mother, that's Mahalia, whom we knew as Aunt Mahalia, Dorothy Hyde, who was in charge of the United Negro Women. But in retaliation, Birmingham, and the Charles, where they had the first Children's Day ever at 16th Street Baptist Church, which was the headquarters. And a bomb went off in the girls' bathroom. And they killed 4 little girls, 1 little girl. This is what was the girls' bathroom. These are the girls who were killed. This was the trauma that I was left with. This is what I took on as a small child because I had participated in every major part of the civil rights movement. These were innocent children, and I thought, well, if God can take these innocent children, God will take me. This is Sarah, who survived the bombing. This is just the brutality. They killed girls. And this is the funeral that would continue. And then they killed our president. And I remember coming home from kindergarten, was it kindergarten or first grade? I'm sorry. Coming home from first grade and seeing my mother crying. And because my mother was crying, I was going to cry. And I knew because they had killed our president, because at that point I was the same age as this young lady, Caroline Kennedy. And I took on all of that. I'm just going to go very fast forward so that you all can see voting and how important the president is discussing voting and what they were going to do. And when January 6 happened, I saw this photograph. A voice said, Donzaleigh, look to the left, look to the left. And as the man is sitting in Nancy Pelosi's office with his feet on her desk, I looked to the left, and there was this photograph on Nancy Pelosi's office, and it became personal to me. And then I started to cry because I knew that John Lewis, this man here, had given her that picture and that plaque. And this is Reverend Jesse L. Douglas, who's gone, who's Uncle Martin, who is gone, who is James Foreman, who is gone, and my dad, who's gone. And John would be the last to leave. And so, yes, this became my fight to fight for our democracy. And I'm just going to show you these pictures, and then I'm going to go to us, because that's us on the front line of that march. And I'm holding up, I'm a slow walker, and my mother has her hand in her back, my back. And so because I'm holding everybody up, thousands of people, this priest comes and he yanks me on down the road. And it was very important what was happening. And that's me, that little girl, my sister and my brother. And so that evening, the movie stars come and they sing. And Tony Bennett sang, I Left My Heart in San Francisco. Odetta was there, and Bob Dylan and Joan Baez. And there was Mary from Peter, Paul and Mary. And she had two young men. And as a little child, you don't quite understand. And I thought, oh my God, Mary has two men. Let the day come that I could have two men. And that's me right there standing. And that's my sister right beside me. As I'm listening, I think I know exactly what Uncle Martin is talking about, but I didn't. And then the following morning, I'm still sucking my finger as we get ready to start that final march from Selma to Montgomery for the march for the right to vote. That's John Lewis, my dad, and my mother. And you can see I'm a little girl. My brother is there, my sister. And then we start marching, and I still have my finger in my mouth and the rain cap on my head, because it rained that morning. And then we stop because we're waiting for Uncle Martin to come, and there are thousands of people behind us. And then we start marching. That's my sister right there, and I'm right behind, and my brother. And then we march, and that's my brother up there. But we were a part of everything. And I'll never forget this speech as long as I live. And that's James Baldwin. That's my brother trying to finagle something from my dad. And Uncle Martin's getting ready to say that a great speech. How long? Not long, because no lie will live forever. How long? Not long, because the moral arc of the universe is long, yet it bends towards justice. And I just watched very recently a documentary about Warren Buffett. And he spoke about Uncle Martin's speech about the moral arc of the universe, which made Warren Buffett, who at that point was the richest man in the world, decide that he was going to give away a good part of his fortune to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to give to those who are less fortunate, because we are all in this together. It's not about some of us, it's all about all of us. That's my brother seated there. My dad made him sit there. My sister and I stood backstage. And as Uncle Martin spoke, one arm went up, and I kept telling her, this is going to be a great speech. And she wasn't like, she was more glued at the Alabama State Patrol that lined the Capitol to protect George Wallace, the governor, who was afraid in the governor's mansion. But then later on that day, and this is what I'll never forget, and this is where I'm going to close, Mrs. Vala Lauza, a white housewife from Detroit, Michigan, who took to the South to register Black people to vote. She said, I can't do anything but drive Black people back and forth to the polls. So that's what she did. And she participated in that march, and she got back in her car, and she dropped this man off. She dropped this man off, and she had Leroy Moulton in the front seat of her car. And the Klan saw, as she left Selma, a Black man in the front seat of the car, and they chased her down Highway 80. The speeds got up to, close to 100 miles an hour. And then they lagged back, and they got their pistols, and the FBI informant said, what are you doing? What are you doing? And you can't do this. And they're like, oh, yes, we can. You're in the big leagues. So they pulled up beside Mrs. Lauza, and she slowed down her car, and she turned and she looked at them. They took their pistols and they shot her in the face. Her brain splattered all over Leroy Moulton and the car went into the side of the gutter. Her name is pretty much nameless in history, but President Johnson had to sign the Voting Rights Act into law. And his daughter, Lucy Baines Johnson, is my dear friend. And Lucy said she didn't want to go to school with her father that day, but her father said, the most important piece of legislation I'm going to sign is the Voting Rights Act, and you are going to work with me today so that you will witness the signing of the Voting Rights Act. And then we got the right to vote. And here is the president shaking hands with Uncle Martin and handing over the ink pen, and that's my dad. And that's Lucy right there watching and understanding. And that's how important it is to involve children in very important decisions that are made that not only shape their lives, but help to shape humanity. Anyway, there isn't much more. Oh, and then right after that, oh, yeah. My mother asked us if we wanted to integrate the elementary schools, and I was the first child to raise my hand because I was an artist, and I had a little Black teacher, and she said to me that I wasn't going to be an artist because I was drawing and I was printing. I didn't know how to write cursive. And at that point, I was such a great printer, I would write the checks for my mother. And as I got older, I would balance the check, but I would write the checks. So I raised my hand first before everybody. And I also knew that if I went to Spring Street School, I could go to school with this little boy named Eric Roberts, whose father was the acting teacher. So after we would leave ballet on Saturday, we would go to Mr. Roberts' house. Mr. Roberts was the father of Julia Roberts, the movie star Julia Roberts, and Eric was her little brother, whose job was to take care of me. And so we integrated the schools. And the thing that in integrating the elementary schools, I learned that it isn't the children that carry hate. It's the parents that teach them to hate. And that my little best friend was a little girl named Andrea Berta. And Andrea Berta, she said, my mother doesn't want me to be friends with you. So I'm going to still be your best friend here at school. But when school is over, you're going to sit on the opposite side of the canopy. And this is all the canopy. And she would sit on one side on the bench and I would sit on the other side so that her mother wouldn't know that we were best friends. But the children will tell you because the children are curious. If there's a child that has a problem, then all the children will go and want to find out and how to help that child. But it's the parents that teach hatred. But anyway, because of that, I created this school, New Road School in Los Angeles, where Amanda Gorman, who is the poet laureate, she's the young poet laureate. She was one of my students, and she used to sit on the floor with me and her twin sister with all the little students every year, and I would teach them the history of the civil rights movement and let them know that it was all of us together. And then the other thing I want you to understand is that what you give to the children are important. I knew this guy named Jack Ashworth, and he married an Asian woman. And she was saying that, she said that her children were, they tested her children, they said that they were geniuses. And she said, no, they're not geniuses. I taught them when they were in utero, and thank you, Lorna, for correcting me, in utero, while she was in the stomach. So when my sister-in-law was pregnant with my first nephew, I taught him the multiplication tables and I filmed his birth. And soon as he came out of the womb, I said 2 times 2 is 4. And that newborn baby whose head had not moved turned and looked directly at me. He's a mathematician and he's an accountant today. And so my brother painted an entire wall in their bedroom, black with chalk. And I put up the multiplication tables from 0 to 12 on the wall. And both of my nephews, were math majors, A students. They played football, but they still were A students. But they learned through osmosis because it was all there in front of them. I also put on the television, a big board, I conjugated 2 verbs like you have in French, have and to be. So I am, he, she, he, all of the, and then the be and to have, I have, you have, he, she, it has, and I conjugated them and I left them there. So every time when they were in preschool, from the age of 1, they would look at the TV, and then right next to the TV were these 2 words that were the conjugation. And my nephew said to me recently, you know, Donzaleigh, I don't know how to speak poor English. I said, oh, really? He said, yes. He says, I have to make an effort so that I can sound like I'm from the hood with everybody else. He said, because you wrote that board there, and the board was there, and it was there for all of those years. And so I always knew how to speak. And if you put it right there in front of children, it shapes them. The sad thing today is my niece, Ella Grace, is 4 years of age. And my brother's been trying to get her into school. Her mother has been resistant, and her mother gave her the iPad. And so they give the children the iPad and they teach them the games. But children are like sponges. And if you give them books and teach them at early ages, they will learn. They start learning from the moment they are born. So give it to them. And don't worry about giving them or thinking that they cannot understand. They understand, they know, and they grow. And my mother, as a Head Start teacher, was able to help children. Anyway, that's my story. I know that there is so much, you all might have questions. All I can say is never underestimate children. They can't hear what you say for seeing what you do. And they're brilliant. They're smart, they're good, they're kind, they're loving by nature. And if you give them the best of yourself, they will give you the best of themselves. Anyway, that's it. That's all I have to say. Thank you so much, Connecticut. Thank you, Lorna.
Oh my, Donzaleigh. I'm stuttering because I'm just so engrossed in all that you were saying. I so was on every word that you were describing and talking about, and I'm just so honored that you were able to share your story with us. As you can see, the emojis that are just flying up, flying up. I think people certainly received your message and received it with such authenticity because you've lived it. And to hear you talk about the importance of children can hear what you say by watching what you do. Wow. Wow. I could go on and on and on. You know, I love you so much. So I will not go on and on. But bless you. Thank you so much for sharing your words of wisdom with us. And we just thank you for not only what you've done, but how your contributions and your family's contributions have helped us to where we are today. So thank you so very much, Donzaleigh. Thank you.
Thank you.
And with that, we will now transition to hear and to see more wonderful news and information and evidence of how to create a warm climate in the classroom. But I first want to introduce a wonderful colleague, Karen Pascal, who is the State Director of Head Start Collaboration Office. Karen is a wonderful human being, someone who believes in Head Start, someone who supports Head Start, and someone who is certainly going to give us some insight into what we are going to watch next. Karen, passing it off to you.
Thank you so much, Lorna, for that warm welcome. And I love the Head Start connection as well with our keynote. So thank you so much for sharing your story. Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be with you today and honored to introduce this webinar's video vignette. This video will show you many of the ways that Stowe Early Learning Center's educators and staff create an inclusive and welcoming environment for their children and their families. I've had the opportunity to visit Stowe on a few occasions, and I can tell you that what you'll see in this video is what is happening every day, and they really are leading by example. Please enjoy the video.
It's important to make sure that all families feel represented and that it is an inclusive environment for everybody that celebrates diversity in our classrooms. We do that in a number of ways. One way that it is done is by giving families of different cultures or languages the lesson plans ahead of time so that they can look at them and pre-teach their child vocabulary, both in their native language and also in English as well. We have had families come in and speak to the other children in the classroom and teach them vocabulary related to the curriculum in their native language also. We have had them bring in books and sit whole group with the class and discuss different concepts that we are learning in the classroom in both English and the native language that the family speaks.
This is an example of our center choice board. The names of the centers are written in both English and Spanish.
We also include a wide variety of classroom books that celebrate diversity, different cultures, different languages. We make sure to touch on holidays that families celebrate and traditions. We do that by giving families a questionnaire at the beginning of the school year where they can share with us the holidays that they celebrate and also traditions and culturally relevant celebrations that they participate in as well. We then will make sure that our library has books related to those holidays and cultural events to create an all-inclusive classroom where everybody feels welcome.
When families arrive at the back door for arrival and pickup, they see notification in languages that are representative of the students in their classroom.
Children are greeted upon entering the classroom with a hug, high five, or a greeting of their choice. We want children to feel welcome when they enter our classroom.
Wonderful. Thank you so very much, Stowe Early Learning Childhood Center, for all that you are doing to help educate and inspire our children. Now I want to pass the microphone over to two wonderful colleagues, Amanda Pickett, who is consultant with the State Department of Education, and to Michelle Levy, who is the education consultant at the Office of Early Childhood. Passing it over to you, Amanda.
Thank you so much, Lorna. Good afternoon. I'm Amanda Pickett. I'm a consultant with the State Department of Ed. And I am just so thankful to Lorna and the Office of Early Childhood for this opportunity to collaborate. I'm also so humbled and honored the message from our amazing keynote on the strength in community, and also the realities of the tough truths of trauma and its impact, but also sharing those critical supports that can be wrapped around to provide resilience and healing. I believe that we can all agree on this webinar that school climate and creating communities where everybody, staff, caregivers, and our kiddos all feel welcomed, affirmed, and included are so important. I'm going to share just a few slides quickly because I really want to get to this panel, just to share some context for our conversation. First, language is really important. Words matter. So definitions and language, since they are so critical, we want to be intentional about how we create this inclusive, affirming, and safe community for all, especially as an engagement and belonging strategy. So when we think of the definitions here, school culture refers to the ways schools work together with staff, students, and families to formulate a set of beliefs, values, and rituals that they share together. It is the way things are done in the school or your child care center, the personality of your school, the underlying norms, the values that shape the patterns of behavior, the attitudes and expectations between those stakeholders in your buildings. A school's culture is always at work. It's either helping or hindering learning. It influences every decision and action in a school, from the leadership style of the director to the way teachers choose curriculum materials and interact with students. If we pause for a moment and reflect on our own personal culture, what are your values, beliefs, rituals, and traditions that shape who you are? How do those influence the spaces that you co-create with others? Who shapes the culture at your school or center? Who determines those values and beliefs? So Connecticut has defined school climate in legislation, which is noted here. It is different from culture. How I describe it is the feel of the school, or the attitude, the behaviors, the points of view exhibited and experienced by students, by teachers, and other stakeholders. It's important to note that school climate is individually experienced. This varies based on multiple identity factors and lived experiences. Numerous studies have confirmed that a positive classroom climate provides many benefits for students and staff. Students who feel close to their teachers have shown to work harder in school, attend more regularly, and have more confidence in their academic abilities. A positive climate tends to build stronger feelings of connectedness to school for both the adults and the students, which is important for supporting those positive outcomes. Now, I'm sure you've all been to plenty of training with a pyramid involved, possibly the pyramid model training. So today, I want us just to focus on this blue of the graphic. We're discussing those policies, those practices, and those structures that you universally use to build a collective community where everybody belongs and has the social skills to navigate the world around them. Things like emotional regulation, self and social awareness, and problem-solving skills. Once we have a clear understanding of our tier 1, we can layer on those additional supports that you see here in yellow and red. Those are those interventions that you do in addition to tier 1 with more practice and opportunities for feedback. So what is tier 1 for school climate work? The reality is that the concept of school climate is large. This image was developed from the National Center on Safe and Supportive Learning Environments. It demonstrates the 3 big buckets of school climate efforts: environment, belonging and engagement, and safety and wellness. I want to start by saying that there's no magic wand and that the secret is really in the intentionality of how the work is done. The real impact comes in systemic change where there's careful consideration to implementation considerations that are rooted in the student experience. The reality is you're already doing a lot. This graphic encourages us to think about alignment and integration. We need to hone in on what you're already doing universally around climate and culture and work smarter, not harder. It's also important that we outline our strategies around these areas and reflect on how we're ensuring that they're equitable, inclusive, and affirm our students and staff. One way to do this is to ensure that we have meaningful ways for students, staff, and families to be part of our decision-making teams. I would encourage you after today to go back and reflect on what are your tier 1 strategies. Consider outlining all of those across these areas and reflect on your ways that you're including others. We spent some time overviewing those practices, the what of how we're creating a welcoming space, but it takes more than just that. We need to have a system that we place those practices into. So how are you currently leading your school climate work? How are you involving those stakeholders in the effort, especially a representative group of your students and your staff and your families? Even your littlest kiddos can still be involved in this work. What data are you already collecting? Attendance data, home visiting data, maybe visits to the nurse, your EDL, your early childhood standard assessment data. What are you hoping the impact of your work will be? What data will you need to collect to assess your procedures for implementation or looking at fidelity or evaluating the effectiveness of those outcomes? And then really thinking about policies and procedures that align with this work. How can you create some predictability and transparency in the process? I know that the Office of Early Childhood led a great webinar last year around discipline and behavior. So I'd encourage you to go back and reflect on those practices as part of this work as well. So hopefully I've provided a large umbrella over this important concept of school climate. I'm so anxious to hear from our panel, but before we move to that, my wonderful colleague over there at OEC, Michelle, is going to share some more ways that OEC is directly supporting this work. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Michelle, and I will drive your slides.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Amanda, for sharing all of that, and for Karen and Ms. Abernathy for the powerful presentations there. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the efforts that OEC has. As Amanda shared, the intentionality around addressing climate and culture is so important. And there's so much that you're already doing, but if you haven't really thought about school climate or culture as a kind of targeted way, it can be hard to find, where do I begin? And so I wanted to highlight some of the work that OEC is supporting and that you might be involved with or have access to that can really help you to see this work and become intentional and think about how you can really support the children and families in your community. So one of the efforts that OEC promotes is Elevate. Elevate really is a way of looking at your program quality and thinking about ongoing improvement and support. It supports programs in creating plans so that they can work on improvement efforts in a really thoughtful way. So that's one way that OEC is trying to promote that ongoing culture of improvement, because we can all improve and grow. And when your program and your teachers and everybody involved is growing and improving, you create that climate and welcoming system for family and children to also see that they can improve and grow. Amanda also referenced the pyramid model, and that approach to looking at what are we doing for all the children in our community. And pyramid model really promotes that positive environment, a supportive social emotional climate, looking at relationships and thinking about how we have a positive approach to supporting social emotional development and behavior. OEC also supports programs to achieve accreditation. So the National Association for the Education of Young Children and the National Association of Family Child Care accreditation processes. As a part of both of those, relationships between staff, relationships with staff and families, relationships between staff and children, and the broader community are all addressed. So that's another place that you can really look at what are we doing around those accreditation criteria or those efforts. And that can be a springboard for work to think about climate and culture. Our Connecticut Early Learning and Development Standards that talk about the skills that we want young children to know and be able to do, they address social emotional development. They also, in speaking to the cultural relevance, have the dual language learner framework. And some of the guiding principles also support all that we've been talking around culture and that asset-based approach and the welcoming community. OEC also supports some targeted training and supports. We've supported training by the Connecticut Association of Infant Mental Health, which has expertise in infant and early childhood mental health. The use of the Sparkler mobile app, which can look at screening to support young children and find who might need a little extra help, provides play activities and tips and some pyramid model strategies that can support families and help programs engage with families. OEC also supports the Early Childhood Consultation Partnership, which provides free early childhood mental health consultation across Connecticut. Because it's a team effort, right? None of this work around culture, around promoting that climate of support and welcoming happens alone. And so programs can reach out to ECCP and get that support when you need some additional ideas and strategies to keep you going. So as we transition to our panel of experts, I wanted to share this idea of thinking across the classroom where children and families engage, the program, and the community. The classroom, there's so many environments of that, there's so many pieces to that classroom environment that involve the teacher relationship with the other teachers in the classroom, how the teachers and the children interact as well. Also thinking about how children are interacting with each other. How do you promote those successful, respectful relationships between the children? And thinking about programmatically, what happens at that program level to support the teachers? How does the program engage with families on that broader level? How is the program situated within the community? How are you accessing other resources for families and really being a part of the community and reflecting the community in which your program exists? Thinking about the relationship between administrators and staff. Do you support that ongoing growth and learning and thinking about that culture of supportive interactions? I had some technical difficulties today with my video and everything. So, but with this supportive environment that I have, everybody was able to pitch in and make the webinar work, even if it's not perfect. So all of these pieces come together, and we're going to have representatives also talking about the community, the collaboration between early care and education or child care programs and the school district, the connection to those community resources, and that just overall collaboration. And what is the community support for the early care and education, for child care and for families? So all of these pieces come together in really thinking about the community and culture. And you're doing much of this work, and we're going to hear from a panel that's going to tell us some examples of what they've been doing that really promotes this ongoing positive, supportive relationships and this learning climate and culture. So I'm going to turn it back to Lorna, who's going to help introduce and moderate our panel. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so very much, Michelle. And thank you, Amanda, for sharing with us the importance of how to create and the essence of a classroom or an area of learning that creates a climate for learning and that's welcoming. So thank you both so very much. And now it's time for us to hear from wonderful individuals sharing more with us about the importance of learning and the climate in which one learns. I now have the honor of introducing our panel. First, we have Samantha Haddad, teacher of Connecticut Institute for Communities Head Start. Samantha, will you please say hello so the camera can feature you, please?
Hi.
Thank you so much. And we also have Tiffany Petway, who is Disabilities and Mental Health Coordinator with Connecticut Institute for Communities Head Start. Tiffany, may you say hello?
Hi, everyone.
Thank you so much, Tiffany. Next, we have Jacqueline Valley, who is the Program Administrator with the Stowe Early Learning Center. Jacqueline, may you please say hello?
Hi, everyone.
Thank you. And next, we have Eileen Costello, Community Advocate, Danbury School Readiness Coordinator. May you say hello?
Hello, everyone.
Thank you so much, Eileen. And we have Tara Calaujo, who is a Community Outreach Coordinator with the Danbury Public Library. Tara, may you say hello?
Hello, everybody.
Thank you, Tara. And we have last but certainly not least, Samantha Brown, who is a parent with Enfield Head Start. May you say hello? Thank you. And I want to say again, a collective round of appreciation to all of you for your patience, your flexibility. And as Michelle made reference to, and our keynote speaker made reference to, we have to work together to make this effort work. So thank you for your patience. And let us get right into hearing more from you with our first question, which touches on the theme of how to build a positive community for children and families. And let us hear from our program voice. The question is, what types of things are you doing to build a positive climate across your programs for the children and families you serve? And how did you select those? And may we first hear from Jacqueline, please?
Okay, thank you, Lorna. That's a great question. And at Stowe Early Learning Center, we are part of the public school, but we have multiple programs with different funding sources. So I like to think that the things I speak about are achievable, relatable for any type of program out there, whether you're a home-based program, a center-based program, or part of the school system. And for us here at Stowe, we really are grounded in creating a feeling of trust. So it's hard to talk about that in terms of how do we select that strategy. But as a collective staff, from starting with leadership right down through, we strive to take a genuine interest in all of our kids, all of our families, as well as one another. And so that just comes with modeling and practice at first. And then we have a strong system of debriefing when something feels uncomfortable or didn't go the way we thought it might, or if a family gives us some feedback, which we encourage often. It's those honest, sometimes hard conversations, and then celebrating the positive feelings that occur. We also strive to have our kiddos and our families kind of co-create the classroom environments with us and co-create some of our systems. We look for feedback even on things as simple or complicated, if you're me, how the parking lot works, right? I could tell you what I think from an administrative perspective. The security director can tell me, but what is it like for a parent to arrive at a busy school when they have to go to work and they have to drop their children off? They might have a baby in the car. What is the best way for them to arrive in a parking lot that, is often constricted, but we like their feedback and that helps them feel like their voice matters. It's also really important for us to have systems that we, and I guess norms are more appropriate in this section for all of us to follow, but also we pay attention to the details. So it's all in the details, making a personal connection around something positive so each family feels seen and heard and valued, as well as each child.
Excellent. Thank you. Very, very important. And with that same theme, specifically speaking to you, Samantha Brown, as from our family voice, what types of actions make you feel welcomed, included, and affirmed in your school community? Or what has your learning community done to make you feel welcomed, included, and affirmed?
To begin our school year, so this is my 4th year as a parent at Head Start. Both of my daughters have been here, and every year is the same. We always start meeting our teachers. We have our orientation. We have our home visits for Head Start, and we meet our family advocates. And each one of, whether it be the teacher, the family advocates, everyone builds that personal relationship, and really makes you feel like whatever we might need to help with our family feel welcome, they're going to be there and they're going to find a solution and make sure that we do feel welcomed. There are surveys and questionnaires that we start off every year with, and it goes into who's in our home, what languages we might speak at home, things our children are interested in, and the teachers have really worked hard to make sure they remember those things and they know what's going on with our kids at all times. And that's a hard thing to do, so that it makes you feel like you asked and I told you and you remembered, and you make sure our kids feel that way too.
Wonderful. Again, keep hearing this message about being heard, being heard. Excellent. Thank you, Samantha. Again, same theme, but this time from a teacher voice perspective. And this question is for the other Samantha. We have two Samanthas, so I need to make sure to clarify which Samantha. So Samantha Haddad, moving forward, we'll just get the last initial, the last name. Please share with us in your classroom, what does building community look like?
So in my classroom, I aim to create an atmosphere that indicates both the teachers and the children have a positive and warm and welcoming relationship. And that all entails like getting down at eye level with the children, physical and verbal communication, making sure that it's compassionate and that there's like a good dynamic between the two of them, as well as including the parents. We see them at pickup and drop off, including them in the communication and what's going on to work together as a team and best serve the children.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And continuing on with our community voice, and either Eileen or Tara, whomever may want to respond, what are some examples of how you have partnered across early care and education programs and the broader community to create a positive climate for children and families across the community?
Hi there. I think Tara and I will kind of piggyback on each other, but the Danbury School Readiness Council has been kind of the glue in our community to do a lot of the connections. So we have 25 great council members who are very involved, and they come from all walks of the community. So what our goal is to connect families to the community, listen to their needs, and whatever services we don't have in the community, to work with our colleagues to make sure that we can provide it. So some of the things that we've done in the past couple of years, we created tip sheets for applying to Care for Kids in English and Spanish and Portuguese, and reading tips for parents. And we went out to the community, put them in laundromats, kiosks, all over the community. Any place that we knew parents would gather, we would put them. We continued funding a Portuguese story time, which I think Tara will talk about a little bit more, but that need did come up through our parent surveys. We hosted English, Spanish, and Portuguese positive discipline classes, and the parents had wanted them through Zoom because it was too hard for them to commit to making it to a location between 6 and 7 at night at dinner time. So we tried multiple ways, and we went with the Zoom meetings, which really made the parents happy. So there's a little bit of empowerment going on as well. We ask the parents for feedback, and then we actually act on their feedback. It's not like we're just asking for it. We have an early childhood fair every year. We bring all the community resources together so that parents have a one-stop shop to go to for the day to see what's out there in the community for their children. And we collaborated with a home visiting association to match the families with people from their culture and their language to make home visiting for relative care providers better for our children and the outcomes by providing a lot of learning materials. But our most recent thing that we did this year, we had what's called Party on the Patio, and we brought all the families in who had children going to school at the police station, and we gave away backpacks and materials. And really the goal was to see the police in a different light for the community. And we had over 800 families come to that event. So those are just some of the things we're doing to connect our families to the larger community. But our library has been a central location for many of our families, and Tara's been an incredible partner. So I'm going to turn it over to her.
Yeah, thank you, Eileen. As Eileen just listed, I mean, that's just a fraction of all of the things that are going on in our city. Danbury is full of advocates and proponents of care and learning for all of the kids that live in our city. So I have the pleasure of being able to work with so many of those leaders and people in the position of, being straight in front of families. I get to partner with them. So from a library perspective, not only do we have programming going on all the time for all ages, obviously including children, and including Portuguese story times and bilingual story times, so that, families of different backgrounds feel welcome and represented. But we are constantly partnering and going out into the community and bringing library resources to them. So for me, as an outreach coordinator, I spend a lot of my time going to where parents are, especially if they're not able to come to us. And then also just putting on really wonderful full level or whole scale programming with partners in the community. So one of the examples that Eileen and I are very proud of and we love to talk about is our One Book, One Community initiative. And Eileen puts together all of these wonderful activities that the programs are doing in their classrooms, but we kick it off at the library here with the party. And we invite everybody to join us. The teachers join us, parents join us, the children are here. We have crafts, we have a photo booth, we have guest readers, and we're reading aloud the books. So it's a really great celebration. And the whole idea is to continue to promote with parents the importance of early childhood reading. Like we really want parents to be empowered, feel empowered about reading with their children every day, increasing their literacy. So we do that in such a fun way. And it's one of our favorites. So this year we're doing Pete the Cat. Last year we did, I think it was Elephant and Piggy last year, was it? Or it was Stripes of All Types?
Stripes.
Stripes of All Types last year by Susan Stockdale. And then the first year we highlighted Mo Willems and the Elephant and Piggy series, and it was a lot of fun.
And at that event that Tara's talking about, we do bilingual storytelling times. We bring in our legislators and other people from the community so they can join us at the library, join us with the early childhood providers. We have information tables about the parent cabinet and other resources in the community for families at that event. So it's a nice way for families to come to a fun event, but also connect to our community resources.
Absolutely. We'll look forward to learning of the next one. Excellent. Thank you. Before moving to the next question, I just want to respectfully, I know that Samantha and Tiffany, you two are a duo. Tiffany, I didn't know if you wanted to respond.
Yes, I can talk about what we do in our Head Start program. So what drives our community building is really collaboration. We implement the pyramid model for the entire program. And so what that looks like is we're actually a part of the Connecticut Pyramid Partnership. So we receive resources from the state in order to share with the rest of the staff. We have focused professional developments that focus on the pyramid model, which is just a social emotional framework, especially starting in these months of September when school is just starting. And we just continue to work together. We have something called the Pyramid Implementation Team. We call it the PIT, and it's teachers, coaches, family advocates, even a parent. It's a team to evaluate how we are implementing pyramid throughout our program. So we just continue to do that and work with the pyramid model.
Thank you. Excellent. Yes, we are fond of pyramid. Thank you. Before going on to the next question, I want to say I do see the time, and I do understand those that may have to drop off. And thank you so much for sharing your time with us. We have such rich information to share. We want to keep going. So those that are able to stay, thank you so much for staying. But this is being recorded. And so those that may have to leave early, please check out ctoec.org, our website, where you can view the remainder of the webinar there. But moving on to our next question, touching on capacity building with respect to the supports and systems that have helped you create a positive learning environment for children and families. And so beginning with our program voice, so Jacqueline, going to you. What types of training or resources have helped you to address climate as a program? And how are you implementing climate initiatives across your program?
Okay, great question, Lorna. As we would expect for children, when we have high expectations and we have clear expectations, children will rise to the occasion. They will exceed things that they didn't even know they were capable of doing. NIAC NACI accreditation and Head Start standards really are what start where we start here at Stowe. So while we're not all Head Start programs, those markers of quality that Head Start stands for, as well as the accreditation standards that sort of line up, are where we start in terms of how we're addressing climate, because that quality is where we need to start anyway. And so when the staff really sees the impact of meeting those standards at a high level, they start to elevate how they feel about the profession that they work in, and they're reminded frequently of that. We also, of course, have social emotional curriculum, second step that we use. We use common language around executive function strategies, and everyone has some of the same environmental supports for children to be successful in. I will say that outside of programs that we're using, we try to reduce initiatives for staff here because there's always something new that you could pick up and jump into, but we try to get more depth in what we're doing and what work we're doing. So specifically around equity, diversity, inclusion, and belonging, we've done a lot of work with book studies around from NAYC and how this work impacts families and young children, which has led us to conversations around the impact of our choice of words when we're engaging with someone, making sure that all families, staff, students, everyone who comes in our school sees themselves represented, whether it's in our staff, our materials. And so I think that's a really important part of what we do. And one thing that I say is most important for us outside of having a program or professional development is a culture of reflection and almost case scenarios. So something that may have happened in our day. For example, we have a child who had a hair wrap on that came off. A staff member thought they were doing the right thing by placing it back on. A mom called and was rather upset about it. And so I returned her call and I said, I have to be honest with you, I'm trying to learn from you. So if you don't mind sharing why, how you're feeling, why you're feeling this way, and what we could have done differently next time to respect your choices here. And then I brought that to the staff during a staff meeting. We had a big conversation around, why the decisions were made, how communicating with families ahead of time is so important to get their voice. And you won't always know everything that's the right thing to do, but that honesty, the transparency, the accepting that we don't know best, that parents are going to be able to help us understand better is really something that we value here. So that constant reflection on real life situations that happen with our kids and our families.
Such rich information. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I appreciate the emphasis on being authentic and genuine with what's being done. Continuing in terms of hearing our teacher voice, and I'm intentionally speaking a bit slower because we want to ensure that our interpreters are able to share what's being shared with those that are listening in Spanish. From our teacher voice, either Samantha or Tiffany, have you encountered any challenges as you've worked to create a positive climate in your classroom? If so, what supports and systems helped you to address these challenges?
I think every teacher has probably gone through challenges. We know each child learns differently. So here at Head Start, it's essential to individualize to meet each child's need. And with that takes time too, building that relationship to understand what may work for them or what may not. And I know at Head Start, we all work as a team, like even from teacher to teacher, or there's coaches and people who can come help or give you tools on how to best help your children that might need certain things that might not work for other children.
And for me, as a disabilities and mental health manager, I support the children that may have challenging behavior, either due to a disability or trauma. So sometimes it's hard on teachers when there's also trauma involved. So I try to focus more on like collecting data and then using that data to influence what professional developments we have for our staff. So we do full pyramid days where we have trainings on just like the bottom of the pyramid, but then we also like utilize class to assess the environment and the teacher to child interactions. And then once that happens, we use that data and those scores to help influence what we're going to talk about with our staff members next. We also do something that is a little bit different. I am trained in verbal de-escalation. So I do have a team of people that are trained by the Crisis Prevention Institute. And so if a teacher really needs help, if there's a child that is really showing some crisis behaviors, we have a system so that they can call and they can get somebody that's trained in their classroom to kind of help support the teacher and the child through those moments.
So important to have many levels of supports and interventions. Thank you so much, Tiffany and Samantha. We want to also continue to hear and learn from our community perspective. So Eileen or Tara, what challenges have emerged in your community in relation to the overall climate for children and families? And what has been helpful in creating a sense of belonging for children and families?
Tara, do you want to start or?
Sure, I can start. So yeah, when Eileen and I were talking about our sort of shared experiences with this, we kind of both came up with language barriers for us. In our community, we have a lot of different languages spoken, obviously, with interpretation, even on this webinar right now, we know that many languages are part of the world that we live in. So that tends to be a little bit of a barrier. So I know for us here at the library, we do focus on making sure that our multilingual staff members are available and welcoming parents and helping them to know that they can communicate their needs with us effectively. When I go out and I do presentations or I do library card sign up, I don't speak fluent Portuguese or Spanish, which are two of our top most spoken languages here in Danbury, but I will have somebody come along with me or somebody who's at the event already will help me with interpretation, because we do really want to let families know that libraries, we are willing and able to find solutions and ways to communicate effectively with them. So language is one of our barriers, but we always act welcoming. So we hope to, still make everybody feel good about being here at the library. And then the second piece we talked about, and Eileen, if you don't mind, I'll just say both of them that I thought, and then if you want to add, please do, was transportation. A lot of the families here in Danbury, may struggle with transportation. It might be inconsistent or unavailable. So I do my best to go out to events and schools and places where the families can get to and where they already are, so that everybody has access to library cards. Our services here at the library, in many cases, are digital, so you don't even have to come into the library. So we do try to continue to bring resources to the people where they are.
And just continuing on what Tara was saying, the good part, like one of the solutions to this, is because we have so many great community partnerships, we know who to go to. So we can meet a lot of families and children's individual needs because we've partnered so much in the community. If there's food insecurity, we know who to contact. If it's clothing insecurity, we know how to contact them. If they need rental insurance or rent problems, You know, a family will come in and tell us that they're being evicted. We're right on the phone. We know who to call. We know who to go to for their help. And even though there might be some language barriers, we always find somebody who can speak the language. We had recently, I'm located by the Bethel border. We had a large Polish contingent come in, and we found 2 parents in our community who spoke Polish that were parents in our program. We brought them in to help us with the interpretation, and they were really helpful trying to help these families get connected. So lately we've seen a couple of Ukrainian families as well coming in. So we're trying to connect to that community as well. We'll find people at our other community agencies who possibly can give the services that they need. So the nice thing about Danbury, it's a large city, but it's a small community when it comes to needing each other's help. We're always at each other's doorsteps and we always help each other.
Hearing you say that, Eileen, has me to think of our keynote speaker's words of, we are all in this together. It's not about some of us, it's about all of us. So thank you
Yes.
for putting that into practice. And now, Samantha B., may you please share with us what efforts in your community have helped to foster a sense of belonging and support?
Thank you. So one of the committees that we have here at Stowe is our policy committee, and it's been really helpful to be a part of that because you get to see into what goes on behind just the educational part of it. You see what all the teachers are doing and all the parts of their day that you don't get to see because you're not here with them, but you really get to learn and understand where everybody's coming from and where your child might come home and talk about something, and if you don't know, you can always reach out to any of those people, and you also get to have a say in some of the things that go on in the school. And then another example, we have our family advocates who meet with us. We set a common goal with our teachers, with us as the parents, and with the family advocates, and that also just really sets the ground for you are a part of your child's education. You're part of all of us making that common goal happen.
Thank you, Samantha, for reminding us of how important that is. And continuing on to another theme of, in terms of implementation practices that you may have in place. Again, it's one thing to talk about what needs to be done. It's also important of how it's implemented. And so with respect to our program voice, going to you again, Jacqueline, how did you engage families, staff, community partners, and when appropriate, children in your decision-making and implementation efforts?
So I am passionate about this one, Lorna, because it is my goal to make school fit our families and meet the needs of our kiddos while honoring staff as well. And again, I'm going to default to the Head Start model. I know I keep talking about it, but it is such a quality model that really sets programs up for success in terms of ensuring that you have that true community, family, school partnership going on. And so a strength I see in our school is the power of our partners, our families, and our students coming together during those policy committee meetings, but also our annual self-assessment, where we are looking at not only compliance data, but we're looking at things that come up throughout the year where we may be able to identify a trend based on survey results. But we know that not all of our families are going to take the survey. So it's also from anecdotal notes that we make when we have conversations with families that drop off or we're on a home visit, and then putting that into something that everyone in our community can ask questions about, think about, and then we can plan moving forward. For example, this year, our self-assessment, we noticed from some data that our students were not really enjoying meals at school. They weren't eating as much as they had in the past. And that's obviously a concern, as we heard from our keynote, that kiddos need to have full bellies to be learning at their best. So we were able to include our 3 to 5-year-old voice in that as well by asking them what some of their favorite foods were and what foods they really didn't care for. So we even had a graph that displayed what they would prefer to see up. We were able to survey families on how important it was that their meals were presented a certain way or that their kiddos were eating, because we wanted to share that with our kitchen staff so they knew the impact that it had on families and kids as well. We had sample menus out, and together with our community partners, we had all these amazing ideas, and we have seen a huge change already in the very short amount of time that this school year has been going on. But that all came from that process of hearing community voices, family voices, children's voices, working together. There were about 45 people in the room, and collectively we're able to come up with some innovative ideas. And we're tracking data on it this year by just having a simple survey of hands for the kids, or in combination with the teachers looking, did they really like this meal? So we can give that feedback to the people who went out of their way to make the change, so that it's a constant, again, a climate booster, right? That they don't feel like we were unhappy with what they were doing. We're just trying to do better, and then honor that they did that for us. So that's just one example we have for that. And we're always collecting feedback all year. So again, those little moments that may seem small turn into big conversations with our partners and our families.
And those moments are so impactful. Thank you, Jacqueline. And Samantha, I'm going to jump right to you at this time. And so with that, how has the learning community engaged you and other families in their work to build a positive climate?
So I would say that they build that just on our relationships, whether it be our meeting at the door, in the morning at drop off, last night this might have happened, so this is why this child might act this way, and everything that we talk to them about, it gets passed on, and it's going to reflect in their day. And then at the end of the day, they'll always check in with us and, say that we did notice this happened today, but we talked to them about this. And that even goes as far as making sure our family structures are recognized, and to our family advocates who, in the beginning of the school year, were looking at our family goals. And like, for example, for myself personally, we had my family structure changed. So our family goals changed. And after I shared that with them, they said, we want to support you and make sure that your new goals for yourself can support and reflect on how your child will be at school. So it's just a community of keeping that communication open, having the trust in them.
How special and needed. You said it well. Yes. Thank you so much, Samantha. And so now to the other Samantha and Tiffany. How do you gauge your classroom climate and make adjustments to make sure children and families feel a sense of belonging?
It's really important to promote a safe and secure and positive environment for our kids in the classroom. And I know, as we've already discussed, Spanish is a predominant language in our community. So I think representation is very important. In our classrooms, we have pretty much all the furniture and walls labeled in both English and Spanish. We're also sure to display multicultural books, even our baby dolls, toys. All of that is represented, which also helps reinforce that idea of belonging. Also in each classroom, we have a cozy corner, which is essentially a safe place for children to go if they need like social emotional support. A child can do that on their own or with the help of teacher support. I think my kids hopefully know that I'm there for them to support them and that this is a secure environment for them. For most of them, this is where they spend the majority of their time outside of their house. So feeling safe in that sense is definitely important. And here in the Cozy Corner, there's like social emotional stories and visuals depicting different emotions. We even have emotion dolls. So tools that help them self-soothe as well.
And for me, walking into a classroom, I like to look and see how much of
That's all right. You're practicing what's being preached, and you are in the setting we're preaching about, so that's okay.
Okay, it's over. My apologies. So when you walk into a classroom, you would really want to see how much of the children and their families are represented in that classroom. And that's just not, nationality. It could be, or it could be ability. With my role, I connect with special education teachers and the birth to three providers. And then we kind of look at the environment. If a child has like maybe a special health need, is there anything that I can order so that it can be brought into the classroom so that the child can have better access to materials. So an example of this is like a birth to three provider recognized that we needed a bigger stool for a child to wash his own hands and maybe independent. So we were able to look around and we found a stool that would work. And now this child is able to be more independent in the classroom and have that really sense of belonging, that that child belongs in that space. So we really work hard to see whether the children are represented in the classrooms, whether it's based on their ability or based on their nationality.
Excellent, excellent. Equity at its peak. Excellent. Thank you. And so broadening it, looking at our community, Eileen and Tara, how do early care and education providers and other community organizations or resources connect and collaborate on an ongoing basis?
So I think it's kind of like a two-part question for our programs. There's a lot of interconnectivity. We have provider meetings. We have a lot of professional development events where the providers get together and they find out the latest practices, trends, what's going on in the community. Our School Readiness Council has 25 members, including parents, and we have a representative from a community messengers group that goes out to all the schools, and they speak multiple languages and they bring the messages from the council. But we also find that at those meetings, we have subcommittees and we have other groups that have reached out to us. So there's a group called the Danbury Collective that's focusing on absenteeism, mental health, and early childhood. So we have representatives from the council on all three of those teams. So we kind of cross over each other on some of these meetings. Myself, Tara, other people were on advisory boards for different groups. I'm on the Head Start Policy Council, the Families Network Advisory Board, and other members of the council. So we all bring it back together and share what's going on throughout the community. So we're very well connected in that respect. And even with our public schools, our superintendent comes to the meetings, lets us know what's going on. We had a big discussion on chronic absenteeism last year and came up with a plan of how the early childhood providers could start, educating parents on the importance of school attendance in the preschool years. So hopefully that practice will carry over into the school years. And then just this past summer, Tara had come up with a great idea of a summer reading program so we could start that connectivity again between the preschool and the schools. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Yeah, we've noticed a little bit that in a lot of our public school settings, having formalized summer reading assignments is sort of fading out a little bit. So in order to sort of keep that momentum going, especially with our youngest learners, is we work together sort of to put something together separate from that. So what we did was we came up with a reading log, and the classrooms would do that. So I suppose I should explain a little bit better. If parents of very small kids couldn't get into the library to participate in our traditional summer reading program, they were invited, the children were able to participate in their classroom summer reading program, where they would do all of the activities together. Sorry, like you, Samantha, we also have announcements. So the children were able to participate in summer reading with their classrooms. And Eileen, I can tell you want to add something.
Just that the great connection there was that we were showing parents the importance of participating in a summer reading program to help their children keep the skills going. So the parents were getting notifications from the Early Childhood Center saying, We're doing this summer reading program because the library offers every year for your child all the way through high school, summer reading initiatives that are free and incentive-based. So it kind of connected parents back to the libraries. That's just one example of how we all interconnect with each other.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. I didn't know if you were going to add more, Tara, if you're pausing as well.
No, I think that pretty much sums that up. Thank you.
Right. It sums it quite well. And it actually is a wonderful way for us to segue to our last question. And I thank all of you so very much for what you have shared and contributed to this discussion. And the last question is for all of you, the same question, the same wording. What words of advice would your younger self tell the adults around you about what inspired you most about learning? Once again, what words of advice would your younger self, however you defined or quantify young, would your younger self tell the adults around you about what inspired you most about learning? And may we begin with Tiffany, please.
Hi, so the advice I would give as my younger self would be to just be excited. I was most excited as a young student when my second grade teacher, she was very passionate about the show Arthur. And because of her passion and everything we did included Arthur, I still love Arthur to this day. So just be very excited, be very passionate. If you are excited as an educator, your children are going to be excited too.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tiffany. Eileen.
I think celebrate the simple joys. It shouldn't just be the big events that you celebrate. The simple joys, the happiness, bring it every single day. And my advice to myself, if I could go back 20 years even, don't be afraid to ask for help. It's not a sign of stupidity, which is how you kind of feel when you're like, I don't understand. Can you help me? It's a sign of that you're willing to learn and the willing to expand. And by finally overcoming that and feeling you could turn to people for help has really brought the sense of community together and brought a lot of people with the same concerns to the table because we all had the same questions and it brought us together and we were stronger together.
Wonderful. Thank you, Eileen. Samantha B.
I think I would say that I would tell myself to just enjoy the little things and be empathetic. Try not to make sure that the kids you don't have to worry about setting or reaching certain goals. Let them be kids, let them enjoy because those other educational things will come.
So indeed. So indeed. Thank you, Samantha. Tara.
I would say to as my younger self to adults is that experience is everything. That the more that you get to see around you, the more you get to play, the more you get to be hands-on, the more people are interacting with you. I think that really builds your learning, and I think that builds your character. So being able to have experiences to me is really important. And I think more so maybe even than book learning or, sort of rote learning, that just sort of being in the world and taking it in and having interactions with people and experiences really does build up who you are when you get older.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much, Tara. We know that our teammate Samantha H. had to depart. We thank Samantha so very much. And so leaving it to last, but again, not least, Jacqueline.
So this is a hard one for me, but I think I would tell the adults around me, my younger self would say that it's okay to be yourself. It's okay to not have the answers. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to have hard conversations. And it's okay to lead with love. Like that is not a dangerous thing. It's not an unacceptable thing. I think going through school, when I went through school, it was not always that sense of it's okay to be loving as a teacher because there's this boundary. But I think it's okay to lead with love with our families and our kids and as a leader with staff.
My, oh my, Jacqueline, what a way your words connect all that has been said, from now to our keynote speaker in terms of leading with love, the power of empathy, connection, representation matters, experience life, ask for help, all of that, all of your collective words of wisdom, we are so appreciative of. So thank you so much, Samantha H., Tiffany, Jacqueline, Eileen, Tara, and Samantha B., for participating and being such a world rather of knowledge and information in this panel discussion. And with that, we want to say thank to all of those that have participated in today's webinar. Want to certainly thank our Deputy Commissioner at the Office of Early Childhood, Elena Trueworthy, and the Deputy Commissioner at the State Department of Education, Charles Hughes. Diana, thank you so much, as always, for helping to give instructions with interpretation. And we thank our interpreters, Aranda and Paola. Thank you so very much. We absolutely are so grateful and appreciative to our keynote speaker, Donzaleigh Abernathy. Thank you not only for your words spoken today, but your words spoken then and the words you will continue to speak moving forward. I think we all continue to resonate from the power of your words. Certainly want to thank Amanda and Michelle. Thank you so much for the contributions you make in helping to ensure we are working to create a climate that is welcoming and learning for all. And thank you for sharing with us what that requires. Thank you so much, Karen Pascal, for introducing the video vignette and you being a part of this effort as well. Thank you to the Stowe Early Learning Center for putting into practice what we're talking about. And Jacqueline giving you a little wink with that as well, because you have connection to that also. So thank you so much for, again, having your walk match your talk. And once again, to our wonderful panelists, thank you, Samantha, Tiffany, Jacqueline, Eileen, Tara, and Tiffany, Samantha again. You all were just so wonderful. I also want to certainly thank our supports behind the scenes as well. Want to thank Jen Ide and Michelle Levy, who was in front of the scene and behind the scenes as well, and our team O'Donnell. Thank you so much for all that you collectively do. But last and not least, want to thank all of you that are viewing this webinar, whether you're viewing it live or you're watching a recording. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for your support. We talk a lot of things, but it's important for us to walk what we're talking about. And many of the subjects that were talked about today is something that we collectively can only do together. We can only help inspire and educate our children together. And we must do that because they are our future leaders. And so with that, thank you all for helping to educate our future leaders. We thank you for your time, your attention, and support, and look forward to seeing you the next time. Take care.